The following program contains flashing images.
It's a quiet, hot night at the University of Kentucky. Nothing out of the ordinary for campus cop Mike Wright.
I was on patrol, just riding around in a patrol car, and when we got that call on Woodland Avenue that there had been a shot fired. I was one street over when the call went out, so within less than a minute probably I was on the scene.
Though new to the job, disturbances at house parties are par for the course for Officer Wright. This one, however, is different.
He was sitting in his chair, kind of slumped over a little bit. It was very obvious that he had been shot. He was struck right in the ear.
Within an hour, Detective Don Evans arrives.
First responders had roped off the scene and people were milling about. So when I got out of the car and walked up, I was briefed by a first responder, and he told me quite simply that a shot rang out and that the victim was a 21-year-old male, football player, a big guy, and that he'd been transported to the hospital. I could see that there was a chair that was overturned. There was blood. It was my first night being on call as a detective. I just transferred over from the motorcycle unit.
The rookie detective thinks this house party shooting will be an open and shut case.
Somebody's going to tell me what happened. We're going to piece this together and go make an arrest.
He learns the dead man is Trent DeJuro, a University of Kentucky football player. A friend tells the detective Trent was about to turn 21, and they were celebrating. The party was winding down. Trent was sitting on his favorite leather chair on the porch, chatting with friends about the upcoming season.
I didn't even know there was shots. I saw the blood. I thought it was an engine.
He said that he heard what he thought was a backfire of a vehicle and turned around to ask Trent if he heard that.
Trent, you hear that?
Didn't even realize he was shot.
Trent, hey.
But when Trent didn't respond, he walked over to him and then thought, oh my God, Trent's been shot. And I remember he looked at me and he said, you are going to find out who did this, right?
A college football player surrounded by friends is gunned down, and no one has a clue, including the detective.
I start to realize that nobody really saw anything. We had a kid that was just a few feet away from the victim, sitting on the same porch, and he's telling me I saw nothing.
At 5:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, we got the phone call that every parent dreads. Mr. DeJuro, this is the Oldham County Police. I've got some bad news. Your son Trent's been killed. What immediately leapt to my mind was an automobile accident. And then he said he'd been shot, and what do you mean he'd been shot? I mean, why? Who? Trent was dead.
At the crime scene, the police try to figure out what transpired 2 hours earlier. It's the first murder investigation for the department in years.
Between the two homes, there was like a little driveway, like sort of an alley. So we surmised that a suspect may have walked in between the two homes, you know, and that would put him just a couple of feet away from Trent, who was sitting on the porch. And if he had a handgun, fired a shot at close range because of the placement of the shot right through the ear, then escaped through the alley. I mean, that was the initial profile that we had. Forensics were doing their thing. We asked them to look very carefully into that alley for for things like footprints and shell casings, anything that would help support that theory. Nothing. No footprints, no shell casings, no physical evidence there in the alley.
A shot in the dark, literally, and just one shot and right to the head. It's like something out of a movie that didn't belong in Lexington.
Lexington's homicide department is baffled. Is this a random shooting? Or does someone have a reason to make this all-American kid a target?
He was working hard. So, I mean, he was dedicated. He was training to it. He'd worked himself through spring training into a position as a starter. And he was real happy. He was proud of what he was doing.
Trent DeGiro was a kid who had worked his way up. He has worked his butt off for 3 or 4 years to not only make the team, but maybe even play, to start. And the summer before that dream is supposed to happen, he's murdered.
At the autopsy, the case grows more puzzling.
The next day, our forensic people came back and said, look, by the way, this was a rifle. And we thought, a rifle? We just don't deal with rifles too much in homicides. But that changed everything, because a rifle meant that this shot could have been fired from a distance. Now we have no idea where the shot came from.
It's a rare kind of murder with a rare kind of weapon. A .243 caliber custom-made rifle, ideal for hunting prey. It looks like a sniper knew exactly what he was doing.
There's a lot of rural areas in Kentucky. You have a lot of people that hunt, so it's not unusual for people to have rifles. But it still is unusual for people to use them in murders. We just don't get that, even in Kentucky.
On the surface, Trent lived a life a world away from mob-style executions.
Trent DeGiro was not someone that you would have thought would have attracted trouble like this, much less being shot.
Trent was often described as a big old teddy bear, rough, big old kid. But when you got to know him, he was a nice, easygoing. If Trent was your friend, Trent was your friend.
Trent's friends are afraid for their own lives. Could they be the next target?
Students are fearful because all of a sudden they have no idea who has done this and what's going on. He's a college student, and it had an impact.
No motive, no suspects, and a sniper on the loose.
How in the world are we going to find out who did this? And that's when it dawned on me that we have whodunit on our hands.
Lexington, Kentucky has one of the lowest murder rates in the U.S.
A lot of people will come here from other cities and don't think they're going to stay, and they end up staying for a long, long time. It's a beautiful place to live, and it can get under your skin in the sense that it grabs a hold of you and you say, I like it here. I want to stay here for a while.
The loss of University of Kentucky football player Trent DeGiro is being felt throughout Lexington. Teammates and friends visited his home yesterday in disbelief.
Trent was just really all-around good guy, and things like this don't happen to good people.
Since Trent was shot so close to campus, some fear that crime is getting too close to home.
In something like this, a man is sitting on his front porch and is shot in the head for no apparent reason, then nothing is safe.
This is not Chicago, Los Angeles, or New York, where we have a murder or two every day. So the killing of someone is a front-page story. A University of Kentucky football player is shot in the middle of the night, sitting on his porch, basically minding his own business. What happened to Trent DeGiro is just totally out of the picture of what most people in Lexington think of this community.
24 hours after Trent is shot and killed, investigators are struggling to find clues. Fanning out across the neighborhood, they go door to door, hoping to find someone who heard or saw something, anything.
In the course of this canvassing, we spoke with one lady who said that she was asleep in the middle of the night.
There was this bang.
She said it sounded like someone had taken like a brick or a concrete block and slammed it into the side of her house.
She points to the corner of Woodland and Columbia Avenue.
We asked forensics to go back over and take a look at the area.
Hit against the wall here, but...
They didn't find a shell casing, but what they did discover is that it looked like the ground had been displaced by something. It's possible that maybe an object had poked 2 holes in the ground. So it looked consistent with what could have been like a bipod. The bipod is typically something that you attach to a rifle if a person wants to lay prone and take a shot.
The marks underneath a dogwood tree are 100 yards from Trent's front porch, a location providing a clear line of fire and an easy escape.
Most people in Lexington would have probably bet their money that this was a professional hit.
We tried to develop theories based on trajectory, but the problem is you don't know where Trent was looking when it happened. You don't know whether or not he was looking straight ahead and the shot was fired from over here. You don't know whether he was talking to Sean, who was sitting on the porch just a few feet. You just don't know.
3 days after the murder, Trent DeJuro is laid to rest. 450 friends and family members pay their respects.
The day before his funeral at the Visitation in the funeral home was our 25th wedding anniversary. And he was buried on his 21st birthday.
The cold-blooded murder of a college student sparks a frenzy of rumors around Lexington.
Oh, there was every kind of a rumor you could imagine. Everything from drugs to steroids, jealous husbands, jealous boyfriends, and odd things, people that lived in the tunnels and came up and shot people. It was just incessant.
Detective Evans and the team forge ahead, looking for anything that might shed light on why someone would want Trent dead.
Normally, there are 1 of 3 reasons that somebody's murdered, and it boils down to money, it boils down to drugs, it boils down to love, sex. So when you don't have a clue what happened, you try to see if you can somehow put one of those 3 things in to help develop a lead.
Theory 1. Was Trent involved in the illegal steroid market?
Trent was a big guy. Now, let's face it, Trent could bench 400 pounds.
Maybe he got roped into something with steroids, drug use. People thought, okay, this is why it happened.
Evans combs the football player's house for drugs and finds nothing. And Trent's toxicology report is clean.
There was no steroids in the system, no steroids, no drug activity.
Theory number 2. Detective Evans digs into Trent's background and discovers that he has a criminal record for a barroom brawl.
Punches get thrown, the person that wasn't in the fight gets hit, and it just turns into a big ruckus.
Is Trent's murder payback of some kind?
We found that people were involved in that altercation just to make sure that there wasn't a revenge. Nothing. None of the people involved in that fight could have been involved in Trent's death.
Theory 3. Is sex the motive?
Obviously, you're going to look to see if there's any jilted girlfriends, any mad boyfriends, mad husbands, anything. So we followed up on that and couldn't find anything. Trent's love appeared to be football, so we eliminated the love interest.
With every obstacle, the mystery grows. Evans refuses to give up on his first homicide case. He goes back over the statements he took the night of the party. Did he miss something?
First, there was a couple of people that approached the party trying to get in and get free beer. Hey, can we party with you guys? And we were told that they were sent away.
Sorry. Next time, right? Yeah, okay.
Maybe they came back and took care of business. Maybe they, out of retaliation or, okay, you guys aren't going to let us into your party, we'll take care of you.
Detective Evans tracks down the party crashers and interviews them one by one.
We checked them, they had alibis, everything worked out fine. So we were able to eliminate that lead.
Evans has one last lead and one last hope.
Toward the end of the party, a pickup truck drove by and had what appeared to be high school kids in it. A couple of the girls that had left the party were walking down the sidewalk, and they yelled at the college girls, like, "Hey girls, you want to party or whatever?" Trent yelled back at them, "Hey guys, they're too old for you. Those are college girls, leave them alone."
Evans sends out flyers asking about the mysterious pickup.
We threw it out there and said, "Look, if you were the ones that drove by the party that night, call us. We just want to talk to you because we want to clear this up. We don't think you did anything wrong."
And so now everybody's thinking, well, gee, I know anybody who drives a truck like that. Have I seen a truck like that? And, you know, it's like trying to find a pin in a haystack. I mean, if that's all you've got to go on, you're in trouble.
No one comes forward. The case cools, and Trent's parents are left hanging.
I think they were struggling trying to find something to tell me, you know, something positive. And I know that they hated when they saw on their phone or when they heard my voice that it was me calling them because they didn't have anything to tell me.
2 years pass. If he'd lived, Trent would be 23, graduated, maybe in law school, maybe playing pro football.
The hard truth was we were no closer to solving this case 2 years out than we were the night it happened.
And the longer it went on not being solved, the more people were searching for answers. Why? Who? What's behind this?
Then, the police hear from a suspicious caller who seems to know a lot about the murder.
He's giving us suggestions on how it could have happened, what kind of rifle could have been used. We became more and more suspicious that this person was contacting us, to a point that we thought maybe we should look into it. He just had an unusual amount of interest in the case.
Police track the call to an address 20 miles outside of Lexington. What could be the connection between the murder of a kid on a college campus and a call from the backwoods of Kentucky?
Immediately, we see that we got an issue.
A mysterious lead on a baffling cold case leads police to a trailer in rural Kentucky. The caller, male, mid-40s, claims to have details on who killed the up-and-coming football player, Trent DeGiuro.
There are newspaper articles plastered all over his walls that talk about Trent's murder. And he's got like 50 rifles around his trailer. He's got paper plates where he has done his own testing on range and distance. This is someone that we thought we needed to look at a little more closely.
Among the arsenal, they find a .243 caliber rifle, the same caliber used to kill Trent DeGiuro. The cops now have a suspect.
We talked to him, and he tells us, he says, "Look, you know, I'm into shooting, I'm into rifles," and he basically shows us where he has done his own testing of rifles for wind correction and distance to help try to determine distance of shot and things of that nature.
Could the loner living in a trailer be their killer? Experts compare the weapon to the bullet fragments found in Trent's skull. After 3 days, Evans gets his answer.
We sent him to ballistics, and ballistics came back and said, none of these are your rifle. There was no link between this person and Trent DeGiuro whatsoever, nothing.
Turns out the man is mentally unstable and obsessed with Trent's murder. Without any leads to go on, Evans is forced to drop the case. But he never forgets his first homicide. As the years go by, fears a sniper is targeting students dwindle. the mystery and the pain do not.
I think most people thought this kid did something to really piss somebody off in a big way and got tangled up with some people that are bad folks, and for some reason he paid for what he did.
Out of ideas and running out of hope, Lexington police turned to the TV show America's Most Wanted, hoping to flush out the killer.
The police came to us and said that they were going to try to get the case on America's Most Wanted, and if we would participate in that. And we said, well, sure, we're trying to get this thing resolved. So we did an interview for America's Most Wanted, and the program aired, and they got some number of leads.
But even national TV exposure doesn't give the police the breakthrough they've been looking for.
Somebody knows. And the way this case is going to be broken is somebody's going to talk. Somebody's going to get drunk in a bar and brag. Somebody's going to tell somebody about it. And that's the way it's going to be broken.
Almost 6 years after his son's assassination, Mike DeGiuro's words prove prophetic. The next break comes from an unlikely place, a local attorney.
He says, look, I have some information that regards the Trent DeGiuro investigation. During the course of 6 years, I got a lot of calls like that. And every single time, it led to nothing. Every single time. But you want to follow up on it. You don't want to give up. So I go down to his office and we sit down and talk. He just wants to give me a name.
Shane Ragland, a 26-year-old computer programmer from Frankfort, Kentucky.
The name Shane Ragland didn't ring any bells. I mean, in 6 years of investigating this case, I couldn't find his name anywhere. I never heard of him.
The lawyer's client is Amy Lloyd. She was Ragland's girlfriend around the time of the murder. She tells Evans a story about a secret that's been haunting her for years.
One night they were at a bar, Linus Pub, which was right down the street from where Trent was killed. And they were engaged in a conversation of what's the worst thing you've ever done kind of thing. They'd both been drinking a little bit.
Remember a Trent guy that...
And she said during that conversation, Shane told her
shot him.
that he killed Trent DeGiuro. Just like that.
Same with the killer.
Amy gives him another clue.
She says he lives just a few houses down from Trent DeGiuro, which we confirmed. He lived within 3 houses of Trent the night the murder happened.
Amy also produces her diary from 1994, showing the entry about Shane's damning confession. After 6 years of chasing down leads that go nowhere, Detective Evans is cautious.
Is this girlfriend just mad and trying to get back at her boyfriend? You have to consider that. You don't want to put someone in jail for something just based on a he said, she said thing. She explained that she came forward because one day there was a newspaper article where Mike DeGiuro, Trent DeGiuro's father, was basically pleading for someone to come forward with information. And when she read that, it just hit her. I can't ignore this anymore. You know, I have to tell someone. I've got to give the family relief. All we had was her word. And I'm not going to arrest someone based on the word of an ex-girlfriend. I'm not going to do that. We decided that we needed to know a little bit more about Shane Ragland.
Shane Ragland comes from a pretty well-to-do family. His father was in the construction business. He built a lot of buildings in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is the capital of Kentucky, that the state government leased from him. Shane Ragland is an extremely bright person. He's a computer person. He's a techno geek, as it were. So he's a smart guy.
Amy's claims against Ragland are explosive, but Detective Evans needs corroboration. He compiles a list of random names and shows it to one of Trent's closest friends.
We asked him, have you heard of so-and-so, 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 how about Shane Ragland?
Yeah, Shane.
And
Shane Ragland.
And then he starts telling us a story. There was an incident with Shane Raglan 3 years before this murder happened. And he explained that he was pledging a fraternity with Shane and that he was in Trent DeGero's dorm room. And in Trent's dorm was a calendar of sorority girls hanging on the wall that they had made for charity. And the girl that was the girl of the month there, Shane points at the calendar and says, I slept with her. Just like an utterance for no reason. And what Shane didn't realize is that that girl's boyfriend was pretty high ranking in that fraternity that he was pledging, and a friend of Trent's and Matt's.
The boyfriend finds out. A few nights later, he hunts down Shane. The very next day, Shane is blackballed by the fraternity.
Shane just confronted Matt and said, did you get me blackballed?
Trent got up and blocked Shane from coming out.
Trent stepped up and said, if you've got a problem with Matt, you got a problem with me. I'm the one that told on you. I mean, Trent's a big guy. You know, if he tells you, if you got a problem with me, the chances are you're going to have to back down.
Could a grudge that festered for 3 years really be a motive for murder?
I remember thinking, well, that's a stupid reason to kill somebody. I thought, you know, maybe that's why we've not been able to come up with a motive, because it's such a stupid motive. I mean, who would kill someone over being kicked out of a fraternity? But just because this guy had an altercation with Trent doesn't mean he killed him. Just because he lived down the street from him doesn't mean he killed him. And really, just because he told his girlfriend he did it doesn't mean he killed him. But things are starting to look a lot closer to Shane Raglan being involved in this murder.
When I heard the motive, it was, you can't be serious. Are you really? I said, this just doesn't make any sense. You know, it just absolutely does not make any sense.
Maybe the answer lies in the decade-old fraternity records of Sigma Alpha Epsilon.
As I was thumbing through these documents looking for Shane Raglan's name, I saw it. There was a list of the people that were pledging the fraternity that year, and Shane Raglan's name had a line through it.
The cold case is back on the burner.
Do you shoot somebody in the head because you didn't get into a fraternity? You got to be kidding me. This is why this guy was shot?
Detective Evans launches a new investigation, starting with Raglan's old roommate.
His roommate told us that in the hours after Trent's murder, that he came home and Shane was there. And Shane had told him that all the commotion of the street was because Trent DeGero was killed. He said somebody killed Trent DeGero. And Andy, his roommate, said, well, let's go up there. And Shane said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. You go up there. So we knew that Shane at least knew when Trent was killed. We knew that Shane was there.
The investigation has a problem. The preppy computer whiz is connected.
Shane Raglan came from a family that had money. His father was well known in business circles, very successful.
Detective Evans goes low profile.
And we started with doing trash pulls. When he would put his trash on the curb, we would go through it. It's perfectly legal to do that, and it's a great way to get information on someone.
Investigators find drug paraphernalia in Shane's garbage. In Kentucky, this merits a search warrant. But the police want more.
This one, to me, started off sort of weak. All I had was a girl saying my boyfriend said he did it. But then every single time I tried to eliminate it, almost to try to prove that she was wrong, something else would come up and go, okay, you know, we're on to the next phase here.
Detective Evans wants to roll the dice with a dangerous sting operation, a plan that involves Amy Lloyd.
I haven't even spoken to Shane in years. No contact.
A plan she wants no part of.
I have to remain anonymous. I can't get involved. He'll kill me. And we told her. We said, look, we will never make you involved if you don't want to be. You know, that's the promise that we can give you. But please help. You know, help all you can. And let's just see where this goes.
Police in Lexington, Kentucky want to set a trap to catch Trent DeJuro's alleged killer. They need his ex-girlfriend as bait.
If she would cooperate in the investigation and prosecution, then we would change her identity and do everything we could to keep her out of harm's way. Then I said, you only have to do this once. And so that was important.
And she said, how are you going to guarantee that while I'm having this discussion about this murder with this murderer, she said, that he's not going to pull a gun out and shoot me or stab me or something? How can you promise me that?
Amy Lloyd is afraid, but she agrees.
There'll be officers there in plain clothes as well as myself.
We decided that the best way for it to happen is for her to contact him via email and just start off like an old friend that's just reaching out, more specifically an old girlfriend that's reaching out. We're going to set up an email account that's going to put you in another location other than where you live and just take it from there and see where it goes.
Amy reels him in by letting slip she's had breast implants. That gets Shane's attention.
After a few weeks of conversing via email, she told him that she had a trip to take and that she could arrange a layover at the Lexington airport.
Shane Ragland takes the bait.
We went in the night before and we set up the airport bar. We drilled holes in the table and put microphones. We put officers at the front of the airport, officers at the security checkpoints so they could monitor for weapons or whatever needed to happen. Amy was able to get past her fear and do what needed to be done. We staged it so that the patrons in the bar would be undercover police officers or agents. We told her that when you walk into the bar, in the corner you're going to see a detective. This is what he's wearing. He'll have a newspaper in his hand. As soon as you walk in, he's going to fold the newspaper, pick up his copy, and leave. When he does that, that's your seat. You go sit in that chair. That chair's hot. It's wired.
Evans is in the next room listening.
Something has been bothering me. Something that you told me a long time ago that I wish you never had. And I need to know how you feel about it now.
The detective can barely hear what's being said, but he can tell Amy has Ragland on topic.
It's so hard on me. You never told Andy or Susan or anybody? Why me then? We're only dating for 3 months, for God's sake. And I stayed with you.
There was even a point in their conversation where he said, "Are you setting me up?"
I just think that, I swear to God,
Let me answer your question. You're not setting me up, are you?
I've never told anybody.
I'm getting this from your thought.
I've never told anybody.
Swear to me, man. You set me up.
Talk about guts. She's meeting a guy who she's probably terrified of.
You know, I mean, you couldn't have been in your right frame of mind, were you?
I regret it.
She can't be sweating bullets here. She's got to act like she really doesn't know what's going on and pull this whole thing off. They do that in the movies. They don't do that in Lexington, Kentucky.
Why? Over something stupid. Do you ever think about it? I'm sorry, but this is something I have to get off my chest because I have to live with it too, you know? Now I just wonder how his parents must feel.
I need serenity. I need peace. I think what happens is I get in a situation where I don't know how to deal with it, and I get frustrated, and I just leash out, and I just lash out like an animal.
It's not a direct confession, but Evans believes he has what he needs to close in. Six years, almost to the day since Trent's death, Shane Ragland is arrested on suspicion of murder.
explained to him that it would be better if he didn't talk to me until we got down to headquarters, and then he could decide if he wanted to talk to me or not.
Raglan maintains his innocence.
I swear to you guys, I did not do this. I wanted to talk to you for 6 years. I expected to look in the eyes of a cold-blooded killer. Are you? Not a killer at all. I've never killed anything.
We asked him the standard, where were you the night that Trent DeGiro was killed?
The night this happened, you didn't even know where the guy lived or you weren't even around him, is that correct? Okay.
We asked him if he lived next to Trent, and he said no. We asked about any altercations that he had with Trent. He denied having any fights or problems with Trent DeGiro. He said he knew of Trent, but he didn't personally know him.
Have you ever personally talked to Trent? I didn't really know who Trent was until after that. I maybe read it in the paper a couple days later.
The detective knows Ragland is lying. He executes a search warrant.
Search warrant to search the premises.
The suspect's parents are separated, so the cops search both houses.
We found a Weatherby .243 rifle in his bedroom at his mother's home.
The same caliber as the one that killed Trent DeGiro. The first concrete evidence in 6 years.
So people are now saying, wow, maybe this guy did do it. And here's the rifle.
At his father's house, they find bullets for the rifle. The question for ballistics, is this the murder weapon?
There are three things that can happen with a firearm, so long as we have the bullet that was taken from Trent's head. They can say this bullet was fired from this gun. They can eliminate that bullet by saying it was not fired from this gun, or they can say it has some markings that are consistent with this rifle, but we don't have enough of those markings that we can say definitively it came from this gun.
It's a partial match.
Ballistics came back and told us that although they couldn't confirm that that was the rifle that was used, they could not eliminate it, and it was consistent with the type of rifle that was used.
They didn't have enough markings that they could say definitely this is the gun that fired that bullet.
Ragland pleads innocent from his cell.
Shane Ragland didn't come off as some crazy guy. I think people thought it was interesting that he came from a rich family, and that added just a little bit more intrigue to the whole thing.
Bail is set at $1 million to keep him behind bars, but his father has the cash. It takes almost 2 years for the legal teams to prepare their case. Ragland's under house arrest instead of waiting it out in jail. Two years later, the trial opens in a media circus.
It was the lead story of the newscast. It was the kind of thing people were talking about at restaurants and bars. It was the story, the topic of conversation.
I have absolutely no doubt that Shane Ragland murdered Trent DeGiro that night.
Ray Larson outlines the state's version of how they believe he did it.
You guys should look at my friend here. Big muscular guy.
It was late. Ragland lived 3 or 4 doors down from where Trent and his friends were living.
Ragland walks past the party. He sees Trent and remembers how Trent had him blackballed from a fraternity. Old emotions come flooding back. He goes home and gets his rifle. He's no sharpshooter. He's an occasional hunter and a decent marksman. Ragland positions himself underneath a tree, a location that provides a clear line of fire and an easy escape.
If you're sitting on that porch and you're lighted and Trent was, and you're someone who's sitting in the dark, you've got a pretty clear view of the porch and a pretty clear shot.
This case primarily was a circumstantial evidence type of case. No one saw anything, no one admitted to anything.
The prosecution's best shot is Amy Lloyd's testimony and the airport sting operation.
You know, have a person who's never testified get up on the witness stand, have to face a couple hundred people sitting there watching them being questioned. It can be nerve-wracking, but she maintained her composure, I thought, quite well.
The only other evidence is the rifle and the bullets. Larson's not taking any chances. He calls in the feds to bolster his case. FBI ballistics analyst Kathleen Lundy testifies that the bullet removed from Trent's head is the same type as the bullets found at the Ragland house.
Well, Ms. Lundy basically testified that they originated from the same box of bullets or from other bullets manufactured by the same manufacturer at the same time.
Bingo. There you go. That's our case.
The jury deliberates for just 6 hours. On March 27, 2002, Shane Ragland is found guilty of the murder of Trent DeJuro.
This guy's going to jail, sentenced to 30 years. I thought it should have been more, but, you know, that's the way it was. And we were going to try to move on with our life.
That doesn't happen. The case takes a turn no one saw coming.
These things sound simple. You look at it and go, well, the guy, you know, he said he did it on tape, but there's always more to it than that.
"27-year-old Shane Ragland has been convicted of murdering a college student. While he does his time, his well-to-do family puts together an appeal. And 4 years after the trial, something no one expected. Ragland's lawyers reveal that FBI ballistics expert Kathleen Lundy committed perjury.
Ms. Lundy's testimony was false testimony.
She lied when she said the bullet that went through Trent DeJuro's brain came from the box found at Shane Ragland's home.
I was asked to evaluate the scientific methodology of Ms. Lundy's testimony in the Shane Ragland matter. The methodology was virtually worthless.
The FBI said this is just the latest and greatest technology, and so we said, let's do it. We did it.
Turns out, millions of bullets had the same composition as the one that killed Trent DeJuro.
And that became kind of the issue.
Lundy is charged with perjury. And the case against Shane Ragland is blown wide open. The prosecution can't go back to trial. Their star witness, Amy Lloyd, has vanished into witness protection.
What did we tell Amy? You're only going to do it once.
And then I disappeared.
She is somewhere in the United States. I have no idea. I have no idea what her name is.
The DA has little choice. They're forced to offer Ragland a sweetheart deal.
The prosecutor says, well, there's a real good chance he's going to be acquitted based on the fact that we can't get this other evidence in. And this is a chance for him to plead guilty to something and, you know, at least get him to admit that he did it.
Ragland admits to a lesser charge of manslaughter. The DeJuro family watches as Shane Ragland says the words they've waited 13 years to hear.
He committed manslaughter in the second degree by shooting Trent DeJuro. You admit the facts alleged in the indictment.
I did.
Shane Ragland eventually pled to manslaughter in the first degree. He acknowledged under oath and on the record before me that he shot and killed Trent DeJuro.
In a stunning turnaround, the court determines that Shane Ragland has already done enough time for killing the DeJuro's son. After 5 years behind bars, Ragland is free.
You're kidding if you think Shane Ragland ever admitted to anything or ever expressed any remorse, except to Amy Lloyd at the airport when he said, in essence, I wish I hadn't have done it.
It certainly chapped my ass when he walked out of the courtroom, essentially a free man. But it's something I didn't have any control over.
Mike DeJuro sues Shane Ragland in a civil trial and wins a $30 million settlement. He hasn't seen a penny.
It is up to you to collect the money. And Shane Ragland's father would rather spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight the amount of the lawsuit than to pay any to the victim's family. Shane Ragland's living his life. He's free. My son's still dead.
It appears that Amy was a prophet, because she said from the beginning that he would not spend his life in prison, that he would find a way to get out of it.
This case was not resolved in a satisfactory way for anybody. But never forget, Shane Ragland is now, and forever will be, a killer and convicted of killing Trent DeJuro.
One man is free to lead his life and grow old. One man never will.
When Shane Ragland pulled that trigger, I mean, he obviously ended Trent's life, and he ended what Trent was. But he also ended what Trent will never be. When I saw my oldest son on his wedding day, and the look on his face when he saw his bride, I know Trent will never have that. And when I saw my oldest son come out of the delivery room when his first daughter was born, and the look on his face, and I know Trent will never have that. That's what Shane Ragland ended. Not what was past, but what could have been, what the future could have been.